All
Can you guys
right.
see my screen?
Yep, we're ready.
And we are live streaming, so thank you again for joining us. This is the monthly meeting of the Community Advisory Board for the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan. We have a pretty full agenda for this meeting. We are being recorded, and these recordings will be posted on accgov.com/100 if you want to go and review it at any point. So that said, I will turn it over to Megan to get us going.
Thanks, Mike. So let's go ahead and go forward 2 slides. All right. So today's agenda, back one, please. Today's agenda is jam-packed, so we're gonna be pretty tight in moderating our time for each of these items. We are right now welcoming you and kicking things off and about to take roll. We're going to spend 20 minutes going through a SPLOST update that Mike referenced in his email reminder to y'all earlier this week about the cost of building project that's coming up. And we will be handing the screen over to the SPLOST team to share that update with you. Then we'll spend the next nearly hour and a half going through the plan development workshopping process, which includes reviewing the outline of the plan that we prepared and sent to you, as well as moving into an interactive ideating and workshopping exercise using Miro, which is our digital version of trying to do a whiteboarding exercise as a group. And then we'll wrap up with reflections and summary of the conversation, an update on survey results since we last connected, and we'll wrap things up. So with that, let's move forward 2 slides once again and take roll of who is here. So let's go ahead and I'll read through the organization name and just indicate if you are present and who you are. So we'll start with 100% Athens.
Michael Songster here.
Hi, Michael. Action Inc. Is anyone on from Action Inc. today?
I don't see anybody in the list.
All right. Athens Area Home Builders Association.
I believe John said he was going to be out of town today.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Athens Housing Authority. Anyone here from Athens Housing Authority?
I don't see him yet. I bet that was Charlie trying to phone in because he did say he was going to be here.
Okay. Then Athens Land Trust. Anyone on from Athens Land Trust? Right. Athens Technical College. Right. Athens Technical College, anyone on? All right. Athens Green Building Council or US Green Building Council?
That'd be me, Tom Lawrence.
Hey, Tom.
Hey.
East Athens Development Corporation. Anyone on from East Athens Development Corporation? All right. How about Northeast Georgia Business Alliance?
Hello, I'm here. Shane Blackwell.
Hey, Shane.
Hello.
And W&A Engineering.
Amy Kasane here.
Amy.
Hey.
Then from the project team, you've got us folks from South Face. I'm Megan O'Neill, joined by go ahead and say
with South Face. Trying to unmute myself. Bailey Shea from South Face.
Thank you. And from Greenlink Analytics, we have.
Hi, I'm Yo Runchi, Director of Urban Initiatives at Greenlink.
And I'm Samantha McDonald, Energy Analyst from Greenlink Analytics.
Hey, you and Sam. And then ex officio Athens-Clarke County Government, who from your organization is on the line today.
Andrew Saunders with Central Services Department.
Ilka McConnell with Economic Development.
And
Daniel Garrett with the Inclusion Office.
Daniel Guerin with the SPLOST office.
Mike Wharton from Sustainability.
Maggie Songster from Sustainability.
Melinda Lord from Housing and Community Development.
Joseph. He's being quiet. Joe D'Angelo with GIO, Geographic Information Office.
All right. Is there anyone else in attendance who hasn't shared their name with us yet?
I think we got
Okay.
everybody.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Then let's go ahead to the next slide and objectives. So today we're going to have a working session on the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan draft outline that we've prepared. And our objectives with that are to ensure a clear understanding of that outline, identify any critical concerns, make some decisions, start building out some sections, identify our shared values, and collect language and thinking from UCAB members on how best to proceed. Next slide. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mike for the SPLOST update, and we'll go ahead and hand the screen share over to someone else as well.
That'll be to Daniel, and thank you. We had this great opportunity come up recently. The Costa building, which is the one on the city campus, the City Hall campus, right next to, it's kind of in that area where the Public Utilities Building used to be, or currently is, and where voting is in the attorney's office. And it has been it's slated to undergo quite a bit of restoration work. And we had a opportunity. The commission is taking a break for July, and this is the point at which the Costa building was coming forward in concept. We had a chance to talk to SPLOST office and realize that there's an opportunity for us to push and kind of give a bigger lift to what that project is, and also to set the standard for future renovation projects and how they are approached. So we were able to work with SPLOST and SPLOST worked with us to get the commission to put a placeholder in there for some clean and renewable energy items. And we want to get your feedback as a group on this, since this could be potentially the first expenditure of money out of the SPLOST 2020 energy SPLOST project. And we see this as a great opportunity to set the standard and to push renovation. This is the only renovation on the books right now, but we wanted to grab this one before it got it away from us, and we want to give you guys a chance to hear what they're doing and kind of what the potential is for us to take the Costa building to this next level. So with no more from me, let me turn it over to Daniel from SPLOST, and he will give you an overview of the Costa building project.
Thank you, Mike. As I said earlier, my name is Daniel Guerin with the SPLOST office. I am the project administrator for this project. And if you're not familiar with the Costa building, I'll kind of go over some generic details and a little bit of history. But if you want to see the full work session, Keith Saunders, our SPLOST administrator, did a great work presentation on the June 8th work session, Mayor Commission work session. So if you want to see kind of get the full detail of what's going on during this project, you can definitely see that on that presentation. But like I said, I'll go through the generic details and kind of give you an idea of what we're going to be doing on our behalf during the demolition and construction phase. And then, as Mike said, we'll bring up some opportunities for this that are available in addition to that. So the Costa building is located at the corner of North Lumpkin and East Washington. It's adjacent to the Board of Elections building, and it's right behind the water department. And the initial project statement discusses what the intent for this building is. And essentially, we're going to uh, renovate this building to extend its useful life, which includes renovation of the interior space, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. There's provision for ADA access and the addition of the fire sprinkler system. And if you look at the current map, it's the building here with the white roof. So as I said before, there's some specific design challenges, but I won't get into too many of the details, but it currently doesn't have any ADA access, which is something that's going to be part of this building renovation. We're going to include an addition on the back of this building, which will provide elevator, an additional set of stairs. The other things that we'll take care of during this renovation will be the complete mechanical, plumbing, and electrical renovation for this building. The current MEP for in the interior of this building is not functional, so it will all need to be replaced. In addition to that, the idea is to, from a thermal aspect, is to create a good building envelope for the building. And what I mean by that is to keep the exterior elements from entering the building, and then vice versa. It's before I leave this one, it is 4 stories. I mean, it's 3 stories including the basement, so it's probably approximately 16,000 square feet. So some of the things that we are doing to address some of the design changes, as I said, we'll provide ADA access, but specifically concerning the, I kind of tailored this more towards the sustainability and mechanical aspects of this, but our intent is to provide our 7.5 continuous insulation to all the exterior walls. We will be remediating the basement waterproofing and moisture control. We'll install new mechanical equipment on which will service each floor. They'll all be independent of each other. All the bathrooms, the lighting and equipment will meet the current Athens-Clarke County sustainability policy that was adopted March of this year. We will also go after the EarthPass certification, specifically for sustainable preservation. And again, some of these the items that I've currently mentioned, they're required either by a county ordinance code or a specific policy that is currently in place. Now, there are some other items that we'll be doing that aren't currently required, which includes the replacement of all the exterior windows and storefronts. They are not currently either historically accurate or thermally efficient, and many of them do not currently function. Another thing that's also included in our construction budget would be to provide the solar infrastructure for any potential solar panels, and that's kind of I think one of Mike's points is bringing me in here is it does create an opportunity to provide funds for this particular project, especially with a renovation like this, because as I said, it's going to be a complete interior gut of this project. And going all the way back to the bare bone walls. It'll be really a fresh start to the building, which oftentimes we don't get that opportunity during these specific renovations. So it allows us to be able to create that nice that air seal for the building envelope, repair the windows, because generally they're not the windows that are there are not thermally efficient, and as I said before, they are going to be replaced. But it also gives us the opportunity to make sure that those are correctly sealed. We'll be installing, like I said, the new mechanical system. There also is a potential for rainwater harvesting, but we'll kind of it's not currently in the construction budget, but it's something that we are that's kind of on the highly wanted list. That if there's enough funds available, we'll try to tackle that as well. But again, some of these particular items require kind of a decision up front as we get into the construction phase at a later date. I'll kind of go through obviously some of the advantages of replacing the windows would ensure that the building enclosure or the enclosed building envelope, which reduces the cooling and heat loss and increases the thermal efficiency of the building, which also reduces your energy consumption and could potentially increase the useful lives of the mechanical equipment. So already there, we're seeing the potential to reduce not only the maintenance cost, but the overall cost for maintenance and operation for the building. With the addition of the solar panels, a couple things there. Obviously the idea is to offset the energy costs, which I believe is in line with the current sustainability policy, as I said before. But one of the other things is it gives us the opportunity to utilize unusable space that's on the roof. The infrastructure is there, and as I said before, in our current construction budget, we'll be providing the infrastructure for that. And what I mean is we'll be up front, we'll run the conduits going from the basement electrical room all the way up to the roof. Now, whether we install the solar panels as a part of this initial construction phase, that obviously is helpful, but if we decide to do it at a later date, the opportunity still presents itself, because we don't want to go back and tear a lot of the interior finishes to be able to put some of this the conduit in. So it'll be done up front. The space available on top of the roof is approximately 900 to 1,000 square feet. As you see in the photo on the right, there's it shows it's open for optional solar array. I did some kind of quick fact checking more or less, but you can go on Google Project Roof and it kind of gives you an idea how much sunlight that's available in that on this for this particular building, which equates to I think 4.6 hours per day, roughly. But with that 900 to 1,000 square feet, that should hold approximately 50 to 60 solar panels. Again, it's just trying to utilize a unusable space, and also obviously offset the like energy costs for the building. Just to kind of give you an idea of the path forward for this project. Last night, if you're unaware, Mayor and Commission approved the project concept, and so we've asked the design firm to go ahead and start working on the schematic design and we'll bring that forward in front of Mayor Commission for approval on the September 7th date. We'll also be issuing the awarding or putting in front of the Mayor Commission the CM at risk contract, which will be doing the demolition and the construction. We expect the demolition to be finished approximately around December, January time period of this year. And the final completion for the project is going to be in December 2022. So I'll kind of open it up for questions, or Mike, if you want to maybe bring up anything that I may have forgotten. But in terms of the windows and the solar panels, we feel that this for this particular project, it's a few things. We don't often get this opportunity for renovated projects, especially at its current stage. There's not a whole lot of renovation projects like this in Athens-Clarke County. And this will be the first, I believe, Earthcraft project that Athens-Clarke County is going to be undertaking. And again, like I said, we're going to we will be achieving the certification as a minimum standard. Now there's some other opportunities to get a higher standard, but at least that's the minimum that we're going to go after as a initial concept.
So do folks have questions, thoughts?
Yeah, well, I got one, and then looks like in the making it solar ready, you can put in the wiring and all that, and I assume you have space for an inverter. I guess you put it down in the basement. Is that where you're gonna put it, or what? And then, because kind of always be wary of putting stuff like that in a basement on something that who knows, you might get a flooding problem or something like that later on. But yeah.
So to answer your question, the current electrical room is in the basement. We're going to continue to utilize. It will be a conditioned space.
So I guess you got to work with what you got, and then you talked about the roof not being live load, person live load ready or capable. Obviously the panel is going to add some extra dead load on that. I assume that's all been thought about, right?
That's correct. We when we put this in front of Mayor Commission, we didn't want to openly come out and say that this roof is structurally sufficient to carry people. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't. It's just we have some preliminary structural analysis for the building that we did, because there were some previous goals to put a garden roof or a green roof on top of there. So we did some structural analysis on the roof, but what I ideally don't really want the roof occupied for individuals. We'd rather keep it for mechanical equipment and things of that nature.
Okay.
Well,
to be the engineer.
Well, one of the things that we would like to get is the group's feedback, because we have the opportunity to not just make it solar ready, but to actually make it solar, and the windows as well. That is the placeholder that we were able to put into the agenda item. So it does give us that capacity, and to go ahead and say, yes, we're going to do that. But it is coming out of the 2020 Energy SPLOST Fund. So we definitely would like to hear from the group if there are concerns, or if you have support for us doing that. And we would like this group to weigh in on that and provide us your thoughts and feedback.
Well, it certainly would be cheaper to do it all at once, probably, than try to come back and do it later on.
That's what we're thinking.
I will say this, the current windows are not, there's a few issues with the windows. They're not historically accurate, for one, because they were replaced, I think, in the 70s. The particular windows, they don't have a thermal break in them like you would normally see in today's windows. And you know, trying to rehab those windows or you know, replace the glazing and things of that nature is not cost effective. I mean, you're just basically putting lipstick on something that's really ugly, to put it mildly. But we're doing all these things. We're doing all these things internally, you know, like the insulation and mechanical things of that nature to create the a better indoor air quality for the building, but then, you know, not replacing the windows kind of creates that void of what we're trying to accomplish.
I wanted to ask about the, so what do y'all anticipate the energy use and how much of that the solar, you know, this potential solar array would provide? What percentage of the energy would provide?
I have to get back to you that. I don't, we haven't done, granted, this is we've initially provided this conceptual design to Mayor Commission. There's some more information that that will be provided during the schematic design. But to your point, you know, an energy study probably should be done to figure out what the energy consumption would be for this building, and then find out what the offset of the solar is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like that's, you know, going forward with our 100% initiative, that should become just a standard part of information presented to the Mayor and Commission. You know, this is the anticipated energy use, whatever. This is where that energy was, you know, will come from. And, you know, if there is so, you know, and I think there should be some sort of pro forma that is just included in all projects. So that, because that's what we need to do, right? To know how successful we're being in reaching our goal.
And that is, let me speak to that. That is one of the things that I have asked the SPLOST to provide is a way for us to track the energy savings, because we certainly want to be able to say we spent this amount of money, we saved this amount of money by doing that, and we also offset this amount of greenhouse gases and help climate change and address that. We want to be able to document it. I will say that what I'm pushing for is all this until the power companies say we can't do it anymore. We're going to push to get the maximum amount of solar we can on our structures. So right now we're able to do that the way the energy market is structured. So we're gonna try to push that envelope as much as we can for as long as we can.
And what about, I mean, you know, what about the consideration of whether you have a battery or not? I mean, if a building is potentially going to produce more energy than it can use during those hours, then doing some sort of cost, you know, analysis of, okay, is it worth? Because again, I mean, we don't want to, if the building, you know, at night is using a certain amount of energy, well, if we have a battery, we can potentially offset that. So I mean, that also should be part of the consideration, it seems.
What I am going to ask the SPLOST group to do, this is great feedback, and I think is perhaps we as a group can recommend to SPLOST, maybe that's the better way to put this, is to make sure that that the system is battery ready. In our preliminary exam so far, remember, something to remember is that we have a project coming online with battery plus storage out at Family Protection. So that's the first one going in for Athens-Clarke County. There'll be some lessons learned there, I'm sure. So we do want to make this project battery ready potentially. the battery market is in versus cost is not, I don't know that we're quite there yet. But I think, Amy, that is very wise that what we would want to perhaps provide the input to the SPLOST group is, can we make the facility battery ready?
Yeah, and to add to that point, Mike, is any sort of fire suppression needs that are required for battery storage. I personally don't know what that is, but it's something that we need to get answers on.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah, please.
Amy, to follow up on some of your questions and comments. So I think what we heard is we don't know, but we will. So the reason we don't know now is this is still it's conceptual design, moving to schematic design. So as they get further into the design of the building, there will be an energy model that'll help us anticipate how energy will be used within the building. And certainly you can start to then also design out what solar might look like on the building and the associated production. So that is actually required as a part of the sustainable building policy update, that those things be disclosed and tracked. I think, so it's hard to vote on something like you may not know an ROI, right? Or is this the place to spend your dollars? But what I would offer is, it's a 4-story building. I can promise you that the goal will be to cover, like Mike said, every inch of roof with solar. And I actually, based off of my experience, think you'll find that this won't be a highly renewable site, because it is space limited for that footprint. However, it is still a contribution towards renewable. And so if this body moves forward with a recommendation for some renewable energy, certainly the project team can follow up with more specifics as they develop.
So I agree with Amy, and thank you for clarifying, Andrew, that we'll see those numbers. I think ROI and energy savings should be part of any of that reporting out, so that people can make informed decisions as we spend the money as a county. I'd like to talk a little bit about that SPLOST project and kind of its intent. And when it was structured, what we were looking for was it would be sort of marginal funding above and beyond what normal construction would do. And so in the case, let's say, of the insulation on this project, where they're talking about adding 1.5 inches of some rigid insulation to the inside of the walls, I guess, for the R value they're getting, that's required by our policy. Potentially, the money from the renewable energy project could be used to say, hey, why don't we go ahead and make that 2 inches of insulation and add 25% more insulation on the exterior of the walls, and that marginal difference between what the original cost of that insulation would be to upgrading it to the 2-inch would be something where that money could come from, which I guess I have a question as to, has that been considered as a use of this money for this project? And is there some sort of space limitation where an additional 1/2 inch of insulation on the interior is prohibitive? So that, and then I guess I have a question about the windows and the project scope, and whether or not the full cost of the windows needs to be borne by the renewable energy project, or just the differential for an upgrade to a better window. Like if they're going to be replacing windows on this project, and we're going to be putting in some code compliant window, again, that marginal increase funding would say that this project could then fund a better window. So I guess I have that question about project scope on the windows.
Okay.
You want to go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah. So to answer your first question concerning the additional insulation, I had that discussion with the designer today, because I figured that would probably be one of the additional items that might come up. So he's looking in. I don't think there's any space limitations, just because we're taking everything out of the building. It's going all the way back to the concrete walls. So there is the opportunity to add additional insulation. So what I requested from him was what that additional cost would be. And then, is that going to change from doing rigid insulation to maybe spray foam insulation? So there's those. So I'll get with Mike to help to provide the additional information for that. In terms of your second question, so the initial budget included the replacement of just your bare bones windows. So what we are requesting for the additional funds is to upgrade those windows so that they're more thermally efficient.
So the confirmation of that, Daniel, is that it is to upgrade, it is to pay the difference between what would have been installed and what we can install that's more energy efficient. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And I do want to mention that we kind of came late to the party on looking at this. Certainly I did, and so we threw the placeholder in there just to hold it. If there is a recommendation, I think what the idea is for SPLOST to get a feel for is, can they continue the design end of it? What we could do is request that if the group feels like this is going in the right direction, and we see, Michael, your mention of the insulation was actually is great. So are there other things that would push this earth craft up a little bit? I think, is that what we're looking at, trying to see what other areas we can push the envelope up a little bit more on energy efficiency? Is that, or is it just the envelope, the solar, and the windows? Is there any other area that we would like to look at? I guess where I'm thinking is, we can look at this and say our recommendation is we're confirming that this is the direction we want to go. This is in line with the SPLOST recommendation, and we want you to continue to this design, and we also want you to consider these things. Now, if there's additional things that we want them to consider, we would have to get the budget numbers on that, and we would have to probably bring another action before the commission, but that won't be until their August or September meeting, which is why we did this in the first place. If we want to go above that amount, which is absolutely wonderful, because we're setting the standard for renovations in the county. This is what we're saying we're doing. So I think we can, I think what their SPLOST is looking for is a confirmation that this group feels like they're going in the right direction, that then they're free to move forward with the $250,000. But if there's other things we want them to look at, they are not limited by that at this point, if we want to ask them to do that.
Well, and I'm assuming that, lighting, I mean, this is a complete renovation, complete gutting, that lighting, that, basically anything in the building that is using energy, that it is as efficient as possible, or as makes sense. I mean, so I guess I would assume that that's what's happening.
So to add to that, we are building to the Athens-Clarke County sustainability policy, which includes the Energy Star equipment, the occupancy sensors. There's a laundry list of items inside of there, but yes, that was taken into account when we were conceptual design.
And then so what they're doing is they're doing that, and then as Michael pointed out, what we're at and what they're asking for, stuff that still would have met those standards, but we're saying go further. That's really what they're looking at. Does that make sense? So if they're going to meet if they have to meet according to the standard, they have to meet Earthcraft. So that budget from that account, from that pot of money, is not being used to meet that standard. They've got to meet that standard within the operating budget that they have, the construction budget they have. What they're asking us to consider is going beyond that minimum, and going that extra step with the solar and the windows. And we can get a price on the insulation and do that as well.
Hey, Mike, not to interrupt, I just want us to be mindful of the time that we have in order to make sure that we can move through to the rest of the agenda as well.
Was there a comfort level in the group at this point for questions? So could we, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
I don't want to
Oh,
take up much
Mike.
more time on this either, but I would say that this project is kind of purpose built towards the renewable energy project. This is exactly the kind of thing that was in mind when I think that was put together. And so, at the time when HVAC equipment is being replaced, we should take the opportunity to make it as efficient as we possibly can. And so those things, I think all of those things, the water heating system and the HVAC system, those are the kinds of things that if you're redoing them all, you should be looking at kind of pushing that envelope and getting as much efficiency as you can out of it. And that's what that project money, I think, was intended to do. It's a little like we're a little bit ahead of the game because we don't have a real plan for that money for everything moving forward over the next 11 years. But I'm very comfortable with any of those upgrades that may be considered. I don't know how everyone else feels, but
So would you like for them to bring back, or you can also suggest other things, but would you like for them? So what I'm hearing is that go ahead, you're on the right track. We endorse that as a group, but also take a look at what you have with these different systems and then the building envelope, and look at what the minimum, what you're planning to build to, and then tell us what what the budget would look like if we go to the next level.
Yeah, Mike, I just chime in there. I mean, it's always best investment is negawatts, not in megawatts there. So, I mean, I would rather see upfront investment in all the systems, equipment, installation, and I would suggest maybe they look at if they've got certain design standards to work toward, but maybe something like the International Green Construction Code that really specifies would do that. And then if that means you got to put off a little bit later for doing the solar PV, so be it. Because once you're doing the renovation, that's the time to do it. Once it's already built in place, a lot of stuff you can't do again.
All right. So Daniel, do you feel like you have what you need?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And then we'll get a price together and bring it back to the group and say, here's what we're looking at, here's what the project's looking at.
Question. So I think great discussion. Does there need to be since this is a user group, does there need to be a motion and a second and a vote? And specifically, are we hearing that you all, trying to capture what I've heard, you would like the SPLOST office to come back with recommendations on additional energy conservation measures above what's already designed that could possibly be funded? Is that a fair summary? Okay, so
So is that a
leave it to
motion?
everybody else to. I can't make a motion. I'm not a member. So I'll leave it. I'll toss it back to y'all.
I'll do that if you want, Mike. I mean, I would move that this advisory board recommends that the SPLOST group goes back and looks at the best ways to optimize the energy efficiency, especially items that can be done or have to be done during the first renovation part of it when you can't go back and do it later on, because that'd be a good investment.
I second that.
And
Right.
point of clarification is, do you all envision solar being in that suite of tools along with energy efficiency, or do you just want staff to focus on energy efficiency at the moment?
I think we should see solar too.
Okay.
I mean, if we're just talking about budget, we should be looking at the whole suite.
Thank you.
But maybe separate those out, say here's what it would take to do the maximum energy efficiency, and here's what it's going to take for the solar PV, because if it gets to a decision point, at least you'll know that information going in.
And are you comfortable at this point including in that the expenditure of up to $250,000 pending this information that they're going to provide us so they can continue to do their planning?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, voting. I guess raise hands. Is that it? And Charlie, you can say yes.
Yay.
Okay. Because Shane, I assume, are you saying yes as well?
So
Okay, there we go.
for our record keeping, it would be useful to just hear everyone's name said out loud for the purposes of the transcript. That's a yay versus a nay.
Okay. Trying to do it quick.
Yeah,
Go
Mike
ahead, Amy.
Songster, yay.
Okay.
Don Lawrence, yay.
Amy Kasain, yay.
Ilka McConnell, yay.
Charlie said yay. Shane put his thumb up. Does that count as a yay? I think that's all the cab members that are present. The rest. All right, so we're ready to go. Thank you all for that entertainment. Daniel, thank you for the presentation, and we shall move into the meat and heart of the meeting. Thank you all for your patience with that really fun opportunity. All right, Megan, back to you.
All right, now y'all are gonna get to watch me hustle between like 4 different screen shares. It's gonna be great. So, 1 minute. All right, are y'all able to see a slide that says Plan Development Working Session? All right.
Yes.
Excuse me. All right, so I'll just do a quick refresher on the purpose of clean energy plans, and then we'll just dig right into a review of the outline and our whiteboarding session. So when we talk about developing a clean energy plan, the purpose is ultimately to educate the community, advocate for change, set values and goals that are community specific, share the analysis that's been performed of the opportunities and benefits associated with the clean energy transition, evaluate our options, state our commitments, and then build in processes for accountability and transparency. All right, so then for a plan outline overview, we've grouped it into, and this is in the Word document that was attached to the invite for the meeting and sent out as well. And we do recommend that you keep that Word doc up once we get it ready, but we have sections focusing on about the plan, the energy landscape, stakeholder and community engagement, pathways to clean and renewable energy, economic and workforce development, community-wide goals, and commitments and next steps. All right, so now I am going to shift to a different window. So 1 moment.
So while Megan does that, for everyone's benefit, I dropped the link to the Google Doc of our outline in the chat.
Right. Let me try to minimize the number of gray boxes you can see. Can you see the Word document with relatively decent ease?
Yes.
All right. So I'm pulling this up just because it's a little easier to see it all at once in this form than over a series of slides. So here's a more detailed look at what we're talking about here and anticipated length of some of these sections. So essentially, when we talk about an introduction, we want to set the context through a letter from the mayor and the city around the goal. Then defining the goals that have been made, explaining the purpose of setting the goal and what the city or county had in mind. Then summarize the processes that were used to come and develop this plan. And then identify some of the pathways at a very high level, as well as when we say cheat sheet summary table of policies and programs, that's going to be an infographic that teases these items out. So might be easier for me to just leave this up for a moment for you guys to look at and see The italicized text is just a default formatting that refers to just the level of indenting happening here. If you're wondering why some's italicized and some is not. So the about the plan section defines the goals clearly, sets that context. Talk about the energy landscape. That's where we talk about the various utilities operating within Athens. What will happen if Athens takes no action in terms of changes, breaking down the local greenhouse gas and climate target baselines, talking about the regulatory environment and the role of the state and the utility level decision makers, essentially what Athens does and doesn't have control over, talking about utility burden and housing, as well as what's already been done, like what momentum already exists and are we seeing to date, and how much further is there to go, as well as uplifting community-driven efforts, project summaries. Then we go through the stakeholder and community engagement process, outlining what we've done, the findings we've heard back from the community, and then describing how that feedback was used to inform the plan, as well as forming values, evaluating policies and programs, and defining commitments. Section 4 would include pathways to clean and renewable energy. This is where we share out the different ACES scenarios that we've been bringing forth in our community engagement meetings and have presented out to you last summer, I believe. And this is where we talk through the assumptions that go into the model, what these different pathways would consist of, and the benefits that would result from them, and associated costs as well. Then, as we discussed in our last meeting, one section that we've highlighted as a good one to lift up that might not be a standard section for all municipalities' clean energy plans, but really seems to make sense given Athens's priorities and discussions, is to really dig deep into economic and workforce development, going through jobs, green jobs pipeline, talking through community-wide goals. I also just want to highlight this little red bar that's going across, which is that this is an internal draft. It is a draft. This is by no means fully decided. And so we want this to be understood to be a draft and to be kept internal, or if shared, for example, this is a public recording, just to keep in mind that this is an internal working document among those joining this call as we embark upon this process to develop a plan. So section 6 would consist of setting these community-wide goals, 7 commitments and next steps. What exactly is ACC-Gov going to commit to do, and what level of detail and specificity is going to be associated with that commitment written into the plan document, because that is a rather strategic decision. And appendices, sharing out survey themes, references, glossary acknowledgements, any other information that makes sense to report out in that forum. Are there any questions about this before we move on to the Miro outline?
So, sorry, so are we gonna be, and I did not see the Miro outline thing. I'm so sorry, I didn't see that in the Zoom reservations. I haven't looked at that, so this may be a question that doesn't need to be asked, but are we gonna be going through this and making comments on each section? Is that what that process is?
To some degree, yes. It will be helpful to have this document up as we're going through the Miro exercise. It's not going to track exactly to each of these items, but it is going to track to content that will feed into this. So like I printed this out as a hard copy so that I can work off of it when we move to Miro. If you have 2 screens, I'd recommend putting this Word document up on one of them. And I mean, you can also review as you're reviewing this in the days or weeks to come. If you have responses or feedback that come to mind, please do send them our way.
Can I ask one question about the outline?
Sure.
On the section 5, economic and workforce development, what exactly would 6.2 kind of look like? The ACC staff write up, like, well, what's going to be the scope of their focus? What is that?
Sure. So ACC-Gov staff chime in. I'll say this will be a joint write-up between like Greenlink, South Haze, and ACC-Gov staff in writing up this component. And essentially, when we reference this, we talk about specifically what, through the business leader conversations that have been taking place, the priorities that have surfaced, and that the current local climate and top concerns and priorities that the county has for economic development, laying out that language, as well as reflecting out the conversations and policy pathways that we want to move forward with based on conversations around Green Jobs Pipeline, other community feedback, etc. Mike, Ilka, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, that's in general what we're looking at is where the Green Links and South Face will take a first whack based on all the input that's come from the public that includes business, green jobs, community, all so that totality of what we've heard in from to this point concerning economic and workforce development. Then ACC staff will provide some additional review, like we'll have HED take a look at it. We'll have so that will by the time it gets to the cab for review, the cab will be able to then provide the additional review on that, and hopefully it will require more of reading through than any kind of massive rewrite. The idea is to take the workload and make it so that you guys can really see that it got done and then add that extra value of things that got left out so that all eyes eventually are on it.
I guess I'd like to add something at this point that comes from the resolution and that was, approved unanimously by the mayor and commission, which was, and it talks about workforce development and jobs, and it's specifically that prioritizing resources to train and hire people from within marginalized communities to participate in the energy efficiency and renewable energy workforce. And so I guess I would suggest that there is a relatively significant focus in that workforce development on what that would look like what role ACC plays, how we do that. And I'm not saying that wouldn't be part of it, but I mean, that's something that's covered in the resolution. And I think that we would be remiss if we didn't address that.
Agreed. And along those lines, Megan, just in general, probably the best thing we do, and I apologize, I have not done my due diligence as much as I should have, of going back and actually looking physically at everything that was in that resolution and making sure that correspondingly we have a detailed a section that calls that out. I've tended to assume a lot of that is rolled into some of these different areas, but it's probably a good idea, to Michael's point, of putting that detail in there so it is reflective.
Absolutely. Thanks for making that point, Michael. Any other comments on the outline?
I mean, I have some questions and comments, but I think I'll wait till we go through and just kind of see what I still have as a questions.
Okay, sounds good. So let me switch windows once again.
Megan, should I drop the Miro link into the chat?
Yes, that's a great thought.
Just wanted to wait in case we didn't want to for some reason. All right, guys, I'm going to drop the Miro link into the chat. If you're able, if you're on a computer, we'd love for you to jump into it by clicking on the link. You don't have to sign up or anything. You can just say, I'm a guest, my name is Guest, or my name is Bailey. And Megan will kind of walk us through this interactive activity. If you don't have a computer, or if you feel like for whatever reason technology-wise will not let you participate, feel free to continue to use the chat, but Megan will go through this.
Yes, I will. So, let me.
So Megan, I would just say full screen is the two diagonal arrows down in the right corner.
All right, can you see okay? Bailey, is there a good way for me to turn off this box here?
Click the number, the 34%. Oh,
Okay, don't want to do that.
it's not that. Let me fiddle with it. Okay, click the little thing that looks like a map that's folded up in the corner there.
Ah, okay.
There you go.
Cool.
And then, Megan, one last thing you'll want to do before you get going is click and this is something that everybody should go ahead and do if you're in, is click the little, the cursor at the top of the left-hand toolbar, and that'll let you navigate instead of kind of dragging. So you can click on things and select them later on.
Yeah.
Now I'll let you go.
All right. So here's where we're at. So Miro one-on-one is more, we are using this system to make it a little more visual and collaborative as we talk through some of these critical concerns, questions, and section content and come to some consensus. So some instructions for how to use Miro. If you can see my cursor here, this left bar Bailey referenced, we're going to use this sticky note tab, which you can click on, create a sticky, and drop it in the other boards that we have set up. It will be obvious where they go, and you can also edit them. All right, so let me take us to our next in here. All right. So when we're talking about this plan and talking through section 1, the first question is, why is this meaningful to the Athens community? And so I'd like you to go ahead and just start contributing in here. There are a lot of Post-its already here, and to edit it, you can just click on the Post-it. Hang on. And click edit and just start typing. So if you can go ahead and do that in response to all 3 of these questions here. So 1, why is the clean energy plan meaningful? What shouldn't we include? And other thoughts. And this is these bottom 2 boxes are a framework we're going to use across the different sections as we dig in. So I'll give you a few moments to go ahead and start adding things. And as Bailey referenced, if you're having trouble editing directly, you can go ahead and drop any requests in the chat, and one of us will go ahead and add it in ourselves. And if you are joining by phone and don't have access to the chat, just shout it out loud. All right. So I'm seeing some items that include cost savings, setting a good example, and keep typing while I'm talking. I just don't do well with silence. Environmental protection, money retained in the community, energy conservation. Looks like someone might be drawing a picture in there. We shouldn't include natural gas. Resiliency. Jobs. I see one under the not include recommendations not associated with energy. All right, I'll give about one more minute. The other boards get a little more specific, but yeah, this one's a good starting point to get everyone in the hang of populating these.
See what I'm doing.
See economic development. Yeah, and the other thoughts section, there's a new addition to include a future opportunities section to address areas constrained by policy or technology. Sense? All right. So let's go ahead and hit pause on edits to this board. And I'll just read through, and if there's something missing that comes to mind now, shout it out. Otherwise, there'll be time to add this to this in the weeks to come. So why is it meaningful to Athens? Climate change, addressing climate change, energy conservation, keeping money in the community, jobs, setting a good example, cost savings, environmental protection, resiliency, and I believe this one says economic development. What shouldn't we include? So we reference natural gas as well as recommendations not associated with energy. And then other thoughts is include a future opportunities section to address areas constrained by policy or technology. All right, thanks everybody. And at the end, I'll go through all of this and recap what we're seeing. So now we'll move to section 2, which is energy landscape. You might need to create some new post-its for this one. So essentially, what are examples of clean and renewable efforts conducted by the county, businesses, NGOs, communities, etc., that could be good candidates to include in the plan as we're really laying out the current Athens energy landscape? Whoever's writing the color commentary on biomass, you've won me over.
I have a guess on who that is.
All right, let's give it one more minute. Got 30 more seconds. All right, so I'll do a recap and please chime in if you have any thoughts that you want to elaborate on with anything here. So within this energy landscape section, some examples of clean and renewable efforts to highlight include WNA Engineering Solar and Earthcraft certification, the West Broad project, ACC Purple Pipe Water, Solarize, landfill gas, Community Energy Fund, SPLOST, UGA Transit Electrification, and Terrapin Solar PV Project. Under the what shouldn't we include, there's biomass, for the love of God, biomass. And then under other thoughts, we've got composting, Athens Renewable Energy Utility, and hybrid or electric buses.
Megan, I couldn't figure out how to, this is Melinda, I couldn't figure out how to add in or to write in text, but our affordable housing partners, Athens Land Trust, Athens Housing Authority, and Athens Area Habitat all use green friendly building construction. So they would be good examples of new construction, housing construction that would be good for this plan.
Okay, cool. I just went ahead and added that. The way you can add text is double click. I did a terrible job demonstrating in my initial demo. But you can just double click and add it. And if you like other pretty colors, you can change them too. Are there any others on there? So within, I had a question about the Athens Renewable Energy Utility. Is that a thought of something that should be developed, or is that something that already exists?
To be developed.
Okay. Thank you. And then for the hybrid or electric buses, are there examples of those that are particularly noteworthy to lift up in this energy landscape assessment or review?
I think Athens Transit added some electric buses a couple of years ago, and I think they're continuing to add some of those. I think UGA also has some hybrid and electric buses in their fleet.
Yeah, so Athens currently runs some hybrids, and UGA is, I think, 2/3 of the way done with a full EV transition. So
It's getting close. I don't think it's quite that far, but it's getting close.
we got a bunch on order, but it takes forever to get them.
Well, then I think we could potentially group these into a few categories of like municipal successes, which you could pull over here. And then we've got these private sector successes, and then almost community. Does this breakdown make sense a bit? And is UGA just its own thing? What do you guys think of kind of this breakdown? Is that unanimous approval?
I'm liking it. I'm not who you're asking, but
And then keeping in mind this breakdown, are there, just for a little bit of parity, are there any other private sector successes?
There are some examples in the listening sessions that Mike and I did. We just need to go through all those notes and compile some of those out of there. I think it'd be helpful.
right, and then if we're looking at from a community bucket, are there others to lift up in that realm? In addition to what we've got here with the Land Trust, Housing Authority, and Habitat using the green friendly building construction, Solarize, and West Broad.
ACC Solid Waste facilitates a sustainable industry roundtable. It's more like waste oriented rather than energy maybe, but it is a good example of, clean and renewable efforts. But, it's less towards energy and more towards waste and zero waste.
Okay. All right. So I also see hydrogen cell fuel rigs mentioned in the other thoughts for ACC transit, local fuel sources, farmers market, CSAs. Right. Are there any other additions that come to mind before I move on to the next section? All right, and let's move on over to section 2 or section 3. All right, so we included this note here just indicating that for the stakeholder, there will be graphics throughout the plan, but for the stakeholder engagement section, we're going to make sure to use a lot of local images, graphics, and timelines to map things out. And that was brought up in the last CAB meeting. So the question for this section is, what recommendations do you have for how Athens might do continued engagement with community and media? And when we say continued engagement, we mean in the years to come, as well as what shouldn't we include?
Forgot what button do I need to push so I can edit one of those again? Because I had enlarged it. Now I can't figure out how to I click on something and it doesn't happen.
You can double click and then post it in the middle.
No.
I figured what I was trying to do, I was trying editing the website as opposed to the presentation.
Oh.
Well, that would have been different.
Yeah, I had them both. I had them both open there. So
I'll
and
just
Mike, I'm
say,
gonna need to leave in a few minutes myself, go to my other meeting. So
I'm
Thank you for being here, Tom.
yeah.
sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll just say that I've been making things larger and kind of moving things around to make it a little bit easier to read. So hopefully not stepping on any toes.
Okay, I don't know how to get rid of this line that I put in here.
Okay, I can work on that. Oh, there we go. Nice.
I beat you to it, Bailey. Okay, let's give another minute and all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and start reading off what's here before I start trying to move things around a bit. So to read these off, I see recommendations for an educational program in person and virtual, public draft plan rollout, proactively communicate with people who have participated, participate in commissioner town halls, Facebook live discussion about specific topics, use social media as developing the plan, put out info about proposals and solicit feedback, annual update, WUGA spots, continued follow-up with groups that engaged in the development of the plan, biannual or annual survey. Under the other thoughts, there's a note to create available and easy to consume materials and tours for our new net zero arena. So if I'm looking at this, I think I'm seeing a few different categories in which to think about this. So I think some of these are ongoing, which I'm gonna, let me move just these blank ones up here. So over here on Right. I'm just identifying things that appear ongoing. And the authors of these post-its, let me know if you're thinking, when you say WUGA spots, is that like over the course of the summer while we're developing the plan, or is this in the future just regular communications around the plan?
Yeah, I was gonna think more in the future, and then, the spots could be, almost advertisements, but also maybe having a show, where we'd spend a half an hour describing all that went into it.
Okay. That's a cool idea. All right, so just clarification in here. So I'll move that over here to ongoing then. Continued follow-up with groups that engaged in the development of the plan. Would it be fair to say that that would also fall under kind of an ongoing umbrella, or is that intended to reference just in the short term as we make the plan? And for now, I'll just tell it this ongoing. All right.
Megan, I know you can't see the chat. Crystal has another suggestion. I just want to give her
Sure.
the floor if you want to pipe up, Crystal, or if you want to just drop in the chat, I can also just put it on a sticky note for you.
Okay, thanks,
But
Bailey.
the answer is it's not too late.
Okay.
It's never too late.
Okay, thank you. Well, the WUGA spots, there are a number of radio stations here in town. One of them is WXAG. So that's another radio station to keep in mind. And then there are a number of print outlets that, cut across, various communities here in Athens-Clarke County. If it were possible to provide, some educational content that's really digestible, even sort of in the run-up to sort of massive implementation, that could be helpful for community engagement. There are also a couple of key groups and key stakeholders that function at the grassroots level in our community. If there was some sort of a almost like a really small, informational type packet, for example, that could, we could get into the hands of the agencies who are serving communities who we know are struggling the most, to generate engagement with, so that that information is coming from people that people already know and trust. Those are just sort of two thoughts that might be helpful.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm capturing that in a comment over here by WGA spots, and I'll hit enter on it in a second.
The other categories I spotted here, I might say tap into the plan development process and then early implementation. So let's see, for using social media, I'm guessing that would be an ongoing effort. Would that be a correct assumption? And keeping in mind, I can't see the video as Bailey just pointed out, so I'm gonna.
I would think it would. I would think it would be whoever put that in there. I would imagine they're thinking not only now, but we need to keep it going.
Okay, that makes sense. And then in terms of the plan development process here, I think I'm seeing is participate in commissioner town halls, unless that is intended to, like, that might be something that falls under everything. If whoever added that wouldn't mind speaking up to clarify.
Yes, I was thinking that would be an ongoing thing.
Okay.
And also current possibly, but for sure ongoing.
Okay. And so by that, when you say participation, do you mean Mike and his team providing regular updates to commissioners on progress, or having community focused sessions, or? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there are several commissioners that do regular, I don't know if they're maybe not monthly, but every other month kind of town halls. And so just having, and then there's several that do newsletters and so trying to get some of the information to the commissioners so they can present it or possibly even participate in them if they wanted to do that, though that sounds like a lot more time for them.
So, Michael, one of the things we do is there's a thing called snapshot that goes out to all of the all the commissioners, and it's put out once a month. As the office increases in capacity, it sounds like, and I would think one of the things that might be a really great idea that takes what you're saying and runs with it is to produce kind of a where we are update that we start shooting out to a lot of folks, including commission. Well, we shoot it to the manager can shoot it to the commission. That's the way it works, but we can put it out as kind of a in progress and what were accomplishments for the month type of thing.
Thanks, Mike. Then I move the public draft plan rollout under the plan development process here, as well as this concept of developing the plan and putting out information about the different proposals to solicit feedback. In terms of proactively communicating with people who have participated, is that in reference to the plan development process or just throughout the clean energy transition? All right. And then for the Facebook Live discussion, what was the timing thought around that?
So that's mine. I mean, I've seen, especially during the pandemic, Facebook Live, I've seen a lot of really cool things on that involve community. And I think people like it because they can, they can show that they are in favor of something or they're not in favor of something, or they can write in the comment. I think it's just a really great interactive. So I think thinking about how we could use that to engage the community ongoing, but focus it on really, it's educational, bring in people to have a discussion, but I think we should think about how, or maybe there's another tool. I mean, Facebook Live is the one that I'm familiar with. There may be other things, but I do think, like I said, I think it's fun and people like it because they can interact with what's going on.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Amy. All right. And for educational program, impersonal and virtual, is that almost another ongoing one?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. This purple one may not end up being super necessary. There are a few new other thoughts that have been added in here. So there's peer-to-peer business tours and meetings. ClearPoint strategies, performance management, to which the Mayor and Commission have open access. It's used for tracking progress towards strategic goals and commitments. Also create available and easy to consume educational materials and periodic reports summarizing expenditures and savings related to clean energy. For that final one, is that referencing for municipal energy projects?
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
As a way, either maybe part of SPLOST or yearly, but we report out expenditures and savings. I would love to have it eventually as a dashboard on the webpage, but often my aspirations are better than my perspiration. So
Nice. All right. So then I think we've got a great set of strategies here for ongoing community engagement as well as reporting out on progress and tracking it. Are there any thoughts with regard to the plan development process that you think are going to be important in here, or rather, and same question for the early implementation. So I might think of that as months 1 through 6 after the plan's adopted. Okay, then in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next item. We can come back to this if there's time at the end, as well as solicit any follow-up via email. So then moving down to pathways to clean and renewable energy. And under this is one where I think it makes more sense for someone from GreenLink to lead the discussion after we've populated Post-its. So Sam, just tell me what to do once we get to the point that everyone's filled this out. So the question for section 4 is, what should we consider for our audience as we describe the modeling efforts? And recall, what was helpful to you in earlier presentations?
Megan, you might want to bring cursors to you.
Huh?
You might want to bring people's cursors to you.
Ah, okay.
Hey, thank you so much for populating some of this, guys. It looks like we have some folks who have put some information here. There's some common themes that are coming up around user-friendly language and narrative explanations of the value of things. So being clear on what values these projects are bringing, these kind of programs and policies, being easy and simple to understand concepts to build off of. So this is good and being geared towards people. So I think this is making sure that the data is relevant to the audience, it's clearly explained and is relevant. So I think that is all great. Clear and concise concrete proposals totally makes sense. I think that probably actually fits a little bit better in our next section where we go over all of the different policy proposals. But we definitely hear that and we can move that post it over to the correct section for sure. I guess one other question that I would ask in here is for you guys to consider is your audience. So is it general Athens folks, or is it highly, I think there are different communities that want different types of documents, and some of them want very highly technical documents with every single detail in it, or they want that in an appendix. So who do you actually think the audience will be, and how technical do you think they will be? And whether or not they want information in appendix for the main issue is another question that we could potentially be considering here. I think this makes sense.
To that end, can it be a little bit of both? I mean, can you have sort of a summarized heading with more detailed information below, to where someone could skim it and see big pictures and graphics, and then below it there is more explanation, so you don't have to constantly be looking back at footnotes and appendices in order to kind of dig down into more detailed information?
Mm-hmm. I think we could definitely put that under recommendation. Sorry, seeing there's a big don't come in, and I want to make sure that's captured before we move on, because it's a rather large post. So Michael, if you don't mind putting Michael, if you don't mind putting that suggestion on the post-it note, and we can be sure to capture that recommendation. Okay, don't assume that people can't understand, and also don't assume that they know everything. That is a good recommendation as well. Okay, the plan needs to be understood by the Athens community, which means being clear and brief enough to be understood back by technical info to make sure that they know what we're talking about. That makes sense. So I think there's a general theme of being clear, concise, and making sure that it's geared towards lay people as well. This is another post-it note, but staying technical enough to ensure that it shows that Athens knows what it's doing when it's writing a clean energy plan. All right, I think there are a couple of people still typing, but the broad themes are there. I don't know if you want to move on to the next one, Megan.
Sure. All right. So this one is on economic and workforce development. And our question here is a little bit of, should this be its own standalone section, or should this be folded within an existing section? And the example we'd put there would be the previous one, pathways to clean and renewable energy, as just a broader subsection. So that one, that question written out there is a bit of a yes or no, but go ahead and also add any feedback you have on components that need to fall within the section around economic and workforce development. All right. So what we're seeing here is there seems to be a strong sense that this ought to be its own section. Is there anyone that would disagree with that? Okay. Lack of objections noted. All right, so then other items that are covered here is that the section should capture feedback from the Green Jobs Pipeline and related labor-oriented efforts, and absolutely, as well as a particular focus on workforce development per the charge of the resolution. Consider indicating what ACC Gov can do, what private NGOs can do, and what private companies and NGOs can do, what partnerships could be formed, and what needs more in-depth consideration. Those are great flags. And another one I'm seeing here is there's a current initiative happening about Green Jobs Pipeline. Make sure to reach out to them for input. And absolutely, I know Mike and Maggie have been speaking with that team a bit and will continue to do so.
Yeah, we did have a meeting with it. So just so everybody knows, that was one of the groups we have met with is Green Jobs Pipeline.
All right, so we've got about 6 minutes. So I'm going to drive us over to the community-wide goals section, which I believe we've got one more after this, but let's go ahead and do the community-wide to the degree we're able, and we can follow up with y'all. All right, so for this one, what should we prioritize in evaluation and recommendation of policies and programs? In the left sidebar on here, you'll see some examples to have in mind as you're thinking through what to write here, which include transportation, residential energy efficiency, commercial energy efficiency, water efficiency / conservation, residential solar, commercial / large scale solar, energy storage, and state level advocacy. And then the bike rack at the bottom. And I think you can also consider the bike rack there as an opportunity to just indicate things that maybe don't need to go in this particular plan that you would advise us to bike rack.
Megan, just to, for those who might not be familiar with the term, can you explain bike rack?
Bike rack, that is good call, Bailey. In years past, you might have heard this referred to in brainstorming sessions as the parking lot. It's essentially ideas that are good and that warrant consideration, but maybe aren't applicable to the task we have at hand at this particular moment, but still need to stay on our radar as we move forward. Give us that 1 or 2 more minutes. Right. So what I'm seeing so far is affordability for lower income households. What's most attainable first, e.g. commercial through incentives. I'm also seeing, it seems the goals of the resolution would establish the priorities, but I see there's that person still typing. Another comment says focus on residential efficiency as 1, 2, multifamily housing, 3, landlord tenant housing, 4, transportation. 5, commercial, solar industry, and business. And I don't see the 6, although it looks like that's probably about to be typed. A separate one is 1, residential efficiency, 2, transportation, 3, housing affordability and more diverse housing options, 4, green jobs opportunity. All right. So in the interest of timing here, it sounds like I'm seeing 2 trends. One is focus on equity-related considerations explicitly called out in the authorizing legislation to set this goal and develop this plan, which talks about affordability for lower-income households, which through some of the policy-specific options identified here really tap into residential energy efficiency and affordable housing, as well as the landlord and tenant problems. Then I'm also seeing some themes tap into starting with the lowest hanging fruit first, which would involve the commercial sector through incentive initiatives. And then across a few different components here, I'm seeing housing affordability as well as green jobs opportunities. So it's a little bit of a mix of where the commercial programs rate in order of prioritization relative to the others. That might be something we want to tease out through some email follow-up or an anonymous survey, just to get a read on some of this rank ordering. I also see it, we want to do it all. And I mean, yeah, of course we do. Okay, so I'm mindful of everyone's time. So we're going to, we'll reach out to you about how to address populating that section 6 slide. And I'm going to go ahead and just move us to the final slide of the deck, which I think was actually in what I had about. If I remove it from full screen. All right. Having some tech issues. So the final slides that I would have pulled up here essentially allude to our standard set of slides, which is summarizing what we have done today and what comes next. So what does come next is we are going to synthesize this feedback and send it to you as a write-up along with our usual meeting notes and transcripts. We are also going to follow up with the presentation content relating to the SPLOST as requested. And as usual, you can contact, oh, somebody kindly pulled that up. Thank you, Bailey. And we didn't get a chance in the interest of time to cover on the community survey findings. So we can go ahead and send those out in written form along with the additional community surveys, themes and analysis, and the stakeholder one-on-one updates. So with that, I think we've got one more slide and I'll hand it over to Mike to wrap us up officially.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. We did say it was going to be a lot, and it was definitely jam-packed. We know we didn't get to everything. We will continue to work toward that. And as always, please feel free to share. And thank you so much for your feedback. We've got a lot of things we want to cover. We couldn't do it without you. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.